Let the magic rise.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
This is London Calling.
My family and I.
Ooh.
Good evening, people. And welcome to Jingly Jangly. Fake news and imaginary views for the post-truth society. Yes, your antidote to reality with me, Olly Connelly, here in Spain. And a big cheers to Mona Radler and all the folks here at the Rev. I wasn't here last week. Yeah, had a break. Today, political chicanery. Yeah, political chicanery. Yeah. What was it? Trump said about a military rollback, being pals with Russia, draining the swamp, all that. In Blighty, May's called an election. So how could that affect the referendum call for Brexit? And then there's France. Oh no, France is in the news tonight. Oh no. Korea, Turkey, and a whole lot of whatnot. Yeah, we've got JJ regulars, Michael Finlay and Piers Garnham here to consider promises, mandates, delivery, and just where the deuce, where ruddy well going. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, hey, Piers, hello, mate, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. Good, yeah. Nice to hear your dulcet tones. You were going to do a commercial today, weren't you? But that didn't happen, but...
Yeah, no, like this game is so crazy. You know, it's like my agent called me and said, you know, good news, you've been penciled for this ad on Thursday. Which doesn't mean you've actually got it. It just means you've been shortlisted for it. Anyway, turns out by close of play yesterday, I wasn't the guy they picked. So,
well, mate. I mean, because this agent, you've got him fairly recently, haven't you? So,
it was over a year
fingers
ago.
Crossed. I mean, these things take a bit of time, don't they? And you know, he's putting you up for a few things here and there, or trying to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose it's a credit that would you believe I had to dance for this? I had to dance to James Brown for this commercial.
Really?
Really? You know, I turned up in a suit, and I had to jig like in front of these casting directors to James Brown's "Get Up, Get On Up, Sex Machine," man. Yeah. I must have funked out quite well because obviously they shortlisted me, but I didn't get the gig. I mean, the praise, you don't
brief. Look anything like James Brown, Piers.
No, well, that wasn't the brief. I mean, the brief was basically
you weren't playing James Brown.
No, they wanted somebody in their sort of 40s, 50s who looked a bit like Gerard Depardieu with long hair.
He has got a big nose. He's got quite a big nose.
His nose is a lot bigger than mine. I mean, come on. I mean, my schnoz is fairly sort of robust, but it's not sort of out of town. You know, big. You know, it's not like.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I did get the gig.
You know what? You didn't get the gig, no. Yeah. So, but you are trying to get into acting later in your life, and a lot of people presumably would have given up by now. So actually, that gives you a slight advantage. You could.
Well, that's what I thought. I mean, I thought that coming in late to the game. I mean, I've acted all my life, but mainly just for fun.
Very good.
Just doing a lot of am-dram. But you know, I've always had desires to try and do it professionally, and you know, after several years in the city, which I loathed, and other industries, I've spent the last year and a bit basically trying to have a go, you know, and I have been up for a few auditions, but and I've done a bit of work here and there, but it's a tricky game. It's a very difficult game to break into. I mean, as we all know, we tend to see the same faces in everything, and they have a sort of stable of preferred names and actors that they like to use because they're reliable and they're good and they're bankable. So they tend to get all the work, and it's very difficult to break into that little clique. But it'd be nice to get some regular work. But here's hoping.
You should be on. You should be on Downton Abbey. You should be playing the butler.
Yeah.
Are they still doing that?
No, that's finished now. Yeah, I mean, I think there might be
finished.
like Christmas special where they, dig up Maggie Smith from her coffin and stick her in a dress and stick some strings to her mouth and eyes to make her look like she's reanimated. But
she's a national treasure.
She is a national treasure, but she's she's another one.
Go on, you were about to take her off then, weren't you?
No,
I haven't got a snobbish bone in my body.
Well, actually,
what was it? That was in Gosford Park.
People think my mum sounds a bit like Maggie Smith. It reminds Maggie Smith or the Queen. I mean, it reminds me of. I used to work for this fella from Eltham in the city, and my mum phoned up one day and left a message accidentally on his voicemail at work, and she said, "Oh, hello, Piers. Mummy here. We're going on a boat trip along the river at Windsor this weekend for a picnic. Would you like to come? Do let me know. Goodbye." And I got to work that morning, and he insisted on playing it to everybody in the office, which was somewhat embarrassing to be fair. But there we go.
Mate, I'll tell you, it's true. Your mum does sound posh. She is posh. Your mum is posh. But yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, that's quite funny. She does sound like Maggie Smith. It's true. Yeah, very lovely as Piers' mum, and I hope that she's listening because she's the only one that does. So.
I sincerely hope that she isn't. Some of the stuff that we discuss.
You have some interesting chats with your parents, don't you? Actually, hold on a sec. Yeah, tell me about some of the chats you have with your dad, because your dad, he's a mason, isn't he? He's a very nice mason. He's not like.
Well, yeah, as I think we've discussed before on the show, I mean, like
I'm just playing for time because I'm trying to get Michael.
He's a low-ranking fella that like as do so many. I mean, this is interesting. I've just been watching Assassin's Creed before we came on air, and actually that's all about the sort of Knights Templar and the Masonic Order and stealing people's free will. They've woven this idea into the fabric of the film, where the apple in the Garden of Eden contained the genetic recipe for human free will, and therefore if they can find out that, isolate it, and therefore manipulate it, then they can control everybody's free will. Which from a sort of message wise, from a sort of, it's not that far from the truth. I mean, we live in the post-age, truth era, post-truth age.
What do you mean? We're not allowed to use our instinct.
Well, I mean, everything is designed. Everything has been designed. Everything has been designed these days.
That's what many roundabouts are about.
Steal our free will. We are a thoroughly manipulated race who are fed a diet of what we're supposed to believe, and. It's more important these days to think, it's so important these days to take everything with a pinch of salt and try and use your gut instinct and think outside the box, because
that's what we're talking about tonight. That's what we're talking about, isn't it? Really, I mean, it's about you vote for folks, depending on what you like, what they say or not, and then they don't do it, and so anyway. But yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? And we're getting into a stage now where it doesn't seem to matter who you vote for. It just, they just seem to go back on it. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case with Theresa May's. But what is the feeling in London? Tell me what you think about this.
I think everybody's very, it is big news. I mean, she said she wasn't going to call an election. Then, of course, she does, in the same way that Donald Trump.
Good timing, good surprise as well.
You had Rex Tillerson making that speech in America, saying that the Syrians were going to be left to decide their own fate, and then suddenly we end up with a sarin gas attack, or some equivalent of sarin, blamed on Assad just after being given a get-out-of-jail-free card, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And of course, Assad gets blamed, and then Syria is bombed by the Americans, and it's all everything seems to everything's gone topsy-turvy. Everything that most of what Trump sort of stood for, or a lot of what he stood for when he won the election, is just he's reneging on now completely. It does make you think that this is going back to what we were talking about earlier on about the sort of the Masonic order, if you like. I mean, it does seem that the world is very tightly controlled, and that the state of Columbia in Washington, which is an independent state, and the City of London and the Vatican, which are all separate states and are almost like countries within countries. So you have a country within a country in the States, you have a country within a country in the UK, and you have a country within a country in Italy. They seem to be the dominant forces, and it seems to be, they seem to have got their tentacles into every aspect of life, whether it be the judiciary, the police force, the army, the world of finance, whatever it is, and they control everything. And if you're not a part of that, then obviously they will take steps to make you less of a viable option, so as they have with Trump. So what they do, if any would-be upstart happens to find themselves in a position of power, which they haven't obviously orchestrated, you see, they have to give us our free will to a certain degree. And with the election, I think, the Donald Trump election was something that we ultimately used our free will with. Or the American people did. They were looking for something different, not necessarily Trump, but he was the only alternative. But since he was an outsider, they have to have the juice on him. So I think they must have something on Trump, something so awful that which they've now shown him that they have. They've revealed their ace card to Donald Trump, and now he's just kowtowing. He's bowing down. He's playing ball. He's basically no longer the president of the United States. He's just another puppet of the old guard, the establishment, the elders of the old establishment.
Okay, I you know what? I can hear that's. Oh, Michael, I tell you what, this is Michael Finlay. Yeah, he's supposed to be my main guest tonight. What a nightmare, Michael. Hello.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
You can't. I'll tell you, can't get the guests. You can't get the guests. Michael, look, you're lovely. I'm so chuffed to have you on the show again. We always have a good laugh, and Piers was chuffed that you were going to be on too. But you're tapping away on your keyboard. You sound as though you're committing Harry Carey or something.
I'll stop tapping.
How are you, Michael Finlay? All the way from deepest California.
Yeah, very deep. I'm doing great. How are you guys doing? Happy 420.
I
didn't really give you a proper intro. I know people know who this guy is, but yeah, I mean, he ran for president. That didn't work out so good. But he now peddles weed outside the county courts, masquerading as a crusading foodie and medical cannabis lawyer. But he basically knows lots of stuff, and is always a fascinating bloke to have on the show.
Yeah, he's a very erudite individual. Yeah, he is. And I'm jealous of Michael at the moment because he's gone and bought himself this really funky electric motorcycle, which I've been looking at all his posts on Facebook of road trips up into the foothills around LA, and it looks like a hell of a beast. And I'm curious, does it make any noise at all?
A very, very hushed whir, kind of like a whisper. It's just, it's like something out of science fiction.
Wow!
Like when you're watching the X-Files and a spaceship comes over and it makes this kind of a quiet whir. It's something like that. It's great.
It's so cool. I didn't even know they made things like that. Is that something that Elon Musk makes, or?
No, this particular one is made by Zero Motorcycles in Santa Cruz, California. And they've been making them since, 2011 or 2012.
I'm surprised they don't export more of them. I would have thought there'd be maybe they do have a global market for them, and I'm just being a bit.
So what sort of performance is that then? I mean, what sort of you know,
Ollie's,
how long does it
Ollie's
take
an
to charge
ex-biker
after?
as well. Both Ollie and I used to ride motorcycles, Michael. So we're kind of two-wheel petrol heads as well. Well, battery heads in this case, but.
You would be amazed. My 0 to 60 is about 2 seconds flat in sports mode. Takes about 100 feet to do 60 miles an hour. Or I can set it in eco mode, and it takes me, like 8 or 10 seconds to get to 60 miles an hour. Depends on how you want to ride it. But the eco mode then saves electricity. So if I don't have a long distance to go, just putting around town, I can put it in sport mode. And I'm literally the quickest thing on the road. Or for distance, I can switch to eco mode and putt along like a grandpa at 65 to 70 miles per hour maximum. So, it just depends on what you want to do with it. It's really nice.
So you can flip between the two settings while you're on the go, and that's fine.
Yeah, there's a little trick to it. You have to let off the accelerator for the switching to take place, but
yeah, no, sure, that makes sense.
Amazing.
It's a nice safety feature. You sort of got your pedal to the metal, and you flip to sports mode and flip a wheelie down Sunset Boulevard or something.
Yeah. But it's nice because if you're riding through a canyon and you kind of want to see some nature, the thing's very quiet, and you have a little wind going past your helmet, and that's about it. Sometimes you can even hear animals as you're out riding around, and you're not polluting, and it's got plenty of power, so it's really kind of a win-win. And then there's places where you can stop and recharge for free or really inexpensively. It's just a great option.
How long does that take? How long does it take?
Depends on the method of charging. If you're plugging in, I got the charge tank feature on mine, so I can use this special, what's called a J-plug, electric charging plug, and with that, even if I'm completely drained, it takes a little over 2 hours to recharge. Or if I just plug into a wall with a regular cord, which is almost exactly the same as a computer, like a PC cable, that takes about 8 hours from completely discharged battery. So it depends on how much you run it down. If you're only like halfway down, maybe like an hour to recharge on the fast charging, and maybe like 4 hours on the slow charging. So it just depends on what you're doing. But there's apps you can look ahead and see and plan out your route.
What would you say to the argument? I heard this argument just a couple of weeks ago that said that Tesla and all the electric cars and so on are not as eco as they like to make out, because the electricity the charge, for example, that you get to charge up your battery, that has to be produced somehow, and it is invariably produced via fossil fuels. And also, of course, these things still have to be produced. How valid an argument is that? And how valid an argument is that, though?
Well, it depends on where you're at and what kind of electricity is being produced. But like here in California, we have all kinds of different electricity produced here, from nuclear to solar to windmills to even tidal charging stations that produce the electricity that gets distributed around California. So there's all kinds of different sources, and whatever source it is, I don't even know of a petroleum burning generation station in this area. They are either running off of water that's coming through the LA aqueduct and local dams that's doing hydroelectric charging, or they're using, there are along the coast a few nuclear power plants, although not very close to me, thank goodness. There's, like I said, a few tidal recharging stations. There's all kinds of big windmill fields and solar fields all around the area. So it really depends on where.
Kind of where what's his name, Pickens, has got an enormous solar farm as well, or is that's Texas or something? T-Bone Pickens, was it? Or did he not do that?
Unfortunately, I don't know for sure about that one. But so even in places where they're using either coal or petroleum in order to generate electricity, they're going to be doing that regardless of what kind of vehicle I'm driving. So the fact that my vehicle is not polluting as I'm driving definitely makes it more eco-friendly and cuts down on what I contribute to the local air pollution.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one other thing there. These American warship, this American warship now that's being fueled by salt water, seawater. I mean, it seems to me that, Piers, things are being withheld from us, no?
Well, yeah, I mean that was announced in the mainstream media as a sort of small article that they obviously wanted everybody to sort of brush over and not really look at. But yeah, I think there was even an article about it in the Telegraph, probably about 2 years ago. And yeah, there's now these modern warships are basically powered by sucking up salt water and then splitting the molecules into hydrogen and oxygen or whatever they do, and powering the vessels that way. So the technology clearly does exist for this to happen now, which adds credence to a lot of the videos that you see on YouTube.
How much do they weigh? That's like, what, 300,000 tons or something of warship?
Well, yeah, so obviously these engines
and Michael's bike weighs what? So
412 pounds.
So we should be able to do this for our cars, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we should, and we probably could. But we all know the reasons why technology of this nature has been suppressed for so long is because the world it's not called the petrodollar for nothing. It's the main source of currency and resource that they can charge everybody for. And if we suddenly had fleets of non-polluting vehicles that you could fill up with water, then obviously that's going to cause a huge dent to the global economics and their power structure. So that's why
it's changing, though, isn't it? It is.
Well, it is.
That's
because,
why Michael's got this bike.
Well, but that's an electric bike. I mean, it's electricity.
It's on the path.
Yeah, it's on the path. I mean, Elon Musk is a sort of a trailblazer, but he's also he's perfecting old technology. It's I mean, battery power is old technology. It has been refined and tuned and made better. And the products are, available on the market now. You can get a Tesla car, or you can get a bike like Michael's, but which are cool products, and there's no denying it. But that's cutting edge.
You're dissing Michael's bike now.
No, I'm not dissing it at all. I'm not. But if as you say, the fact that they've got water powered, giant, water powered military vessels. Just shows that the thing is, all this technology and the information about this technology is online.
For real, though, isn't it?
It's online now.
I mean, how does that work? That is amazing. That is just a phenomenal story. You would think that's like the story of the century so far in terms of the potential for other things.
Well, I think you asked me earlier on about the general election here, and it's. I think people have just become so weary. It's like they've been bombarded for the last few years with so much that they're now kind of. It's almost a sort of recoil situation where people are just sort of thinking, I just don't want to hear anymore. I can't process everything I'm being given anyway. I just want to get on with my life and have a barbecue and invite my friends around and get on with my job and bring up my kids and try and just have a normal life. I can't be dealing with all this other stuff. It's like it's sensory overload, it's information overload. The fact is, all the information about all this technology is online now. The internet, literally everything all their secrets are online.
Do you think that people's heads are exploding with all the information, or do you think that people are just on Facebook and not really looking at anything apart from I
think they're so confused now. They just literally don't know what how to see the wood from the trees. It's just
confusion, definitely.
Yeah, I think it is.
There's been information out there for really over a century. I mean, Tesla patented an invention early 1900s that was basically a big copper plate that could generate electricity at a fairly high rate from what he called etheric energy. And I personally believe that's actually microwave radiation, which is the same basis as radio. I wrote about it in my book, The Tesla Conspiracy, How Far Will They Go to Keep It a Secret, which is a fictional book, but I have my own genuine theories as to how Tesla accomplished some of his things, such as the famed experiment with the 1931 Piers Arrow vehicle that he allegedly ran on what we call free energy, using an antenna and a device that sounds suspiciously like a transistor radio that seemed to channel electricity into this vehicle. So I personally believe that it's quite valid. There's
all sorts of stuff.
YouTube.
Yeah, there's a lot of research about Nikola Tesla's, scientific studies about how there's there's a sort of relationship with the Earth and the upper levels of the atmosphere, and it's like creating two magnetic plates, and that you can it's like I don't really understand the science, but it's like having two magnets, where when you put two magnets and push them together when the forces are opposed, and
there's so many different sources. Tesla even pointed out, because any time you have a flow, an exchange within a substance that can transfer, whether it transfers temperature, whatever, you basically have a flow of electrons. Tesla said if you built an iron rod and planted it in the ground and had the upper end of it way up in the atmosphere, it would be cold up there, warmer down here, and the iron rod would then be trying to equalize itself to send coldness from the top down and to send warmth from the bottom up, and that would in itself create a flow of electrons that you could tap into and basically have electricity produced just from that. There's so many different things. There's electromagnetic ability to produce electricity. There's temperature-based electricity. There's solar-based electricity. There's radio wave-based electricity. Every star in the universe is putting out light and heat and radiation into the vast reaches of space. And we can't even count how many stars are out there. There's billions just in the Milky Way galaxy alone. And they're all putting out this energy that's filling the vastness of space. And there's all kinds of stuff we could tap into. In fact, if it were not for the ozone layer, we would literally be microwave ovened to death right here on Earth from the amount of radiation hitting us.
Yeah, that's right. There are various sort of charged belts that surround the Earth that protect it from the sun's damaging radioactive influence. So yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you're absolutely right, and so there are so many different ways, and a lot of the ways that we are already demonstrating, as you say, there are so many ways of generating energy now. And it does seem, with these ships, that they have the technology to build engines that work off water. So, and there are videos online on YouTube of various scientists that have apparently made cars run on water. So it's like
I've been looking into that. It's easier than you can possibly imagine to do. So.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, it does seem like it has been a suppressed technology, but
this is good.
But it does.
I'll tell you what. I'm wondering how long, seriously, before we're all flying in jetpacks, because it's happening now. That's happening now.
Yeah. Well, the next stage
we could be doing that now.
Well, they're going to have something in Dubai that they're going to release in the next year or so, which is basically using the same technology as these drones. These little radio-controlled drones that you can get. Well, they've now built one that's big enough to put people in a cockpit, sort of little bubble-shaped cockpit, and they're all computerized.
Where you want to go, and it takes you.
Yeah, you basically type in where you want to go, and it takes you there, and they're all self-guided.
I'd want to leave Dubai immediately. But anyway, yeah.
But this is all a process of acclimatization, and
the biggest shopping center I ever saw, Dubai. It's a shopping center with roads.
we should be about 200 years at least more advanced in technology than we are now. But
Really?
we've been stopped because
You say that, Mike.
corporations.
You say that. I mean, it all started in what 1870 or something with the Industrial Revolution, and since then, it's just taken off. Up until then, as a race, we hadn't, done that
Taken
much
off at a
relatively to
controlled
what we've
pace.
done since, which has just been immense. No.
Well, there's been other things that have been done that have then been suppressed because you have corporations that have heavily invested in a particular technology, and so they've slowed down the advancing of competing technology that's better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing that happened with alternating current electricity. Tesla comes over here from Europe, and he gets a job with Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison's famous, and he comes to work for him. And Edison had invested heavily in direct current electricity, or DC, which we now know is very much inferior. And Tesla offered him alternating current electricity. He said no. So Tesla took it to Westinghouse. Fortunately, Westinghouse was ready to invest in it. Tesla created the first alternating current hydroelectric power plant at Niagara Falls, New York, in the late 1800s, and also produced alternating current electricity for the World Fair in Chicago. I think that was 1893, and impressed the world with that too. Edison was going around taking stray dogs and electrocuting them to death with alternating current electricity in order to convince the public that it was dangerous technology, when actually it was no more dangerous than his direct current electricity. You can electrocute a dog with that too. So, but he was doing a disinformation campaign to stop the advance of Tesla's alternating current electric technology, which is safer and better and more reliable, and now is the world standard. And we've had similar things happening since then, but the big corporations have gotten better at it. So now we have a world that's addicted to petroleum. We have these nations that have become incredibly wealthy because of petroleum. The U.S. politically cut off the gold standard for its dollar and decided to back its dollar with other countries' gold, creating the petrodollar. Not other countries' gold, other countries' black gold, their oil, and creating the petrodollar by getting other countries to only accept U.S. dollars for their oil. So now we're very much dependent upon oil, and the governments and the banks and the car companies, and as well as the oil companies, resist the advancing of alternate fuel technology. We could be much farther ahead than where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, it goes much deeper than that. The plastics industry, I mean, everything is covered in plastic.
Yeah.
And then you've got you've got the
and
makeup industry and beauty industry.
Why aren't we using hemp? Why on earth are we not using hemp? And for clothes too. Why are we not using hemp? I mean, all this, talking about climate change and all that, and then they don't do the most simple thing, which is just to grow loads and loads of stuff, which you can use for so many applications, and they don't bother doing it.
Yeah, but that's why, because people can grow it in their back gardens, and if it's so easy to grow, it's so easy to grow.
People.
It empowers people. They don't want to empower people; they want to take all the power.
We're talking about political chicanery tonight. We're also doing a bit of chicanery ourselves, and why not? But in terms of political chicanery, what better example than they have this big, Paris climate with lots of canapes and all that, and they don't even talk about hemp. I mean, it's just nonsense. The whole attitude to tackling climate change it just doesn't make sense from.
Jeremy Corbyn said he'd legalise the use of cannabis for medicinal purposes in the UK if he gets elected in the next general election.
That's a separate thing, but it's equally important. Michael, that's your forte, medical marijuana, and
Well, it is, and we all know that it has numerous applications from a medical perspective. I mean,
that's
good.
changing big time, though. Michael, give us an update then. What's the deal with big pharma's hooks into the marijuana industry now, as opposed to
they've synthesized it, haven't they?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. There was a company that invested $500,000 to oppose the legalization of medicinal cannabis in Arizona just this last fall in November, and succeeded. And it was the one state out of 8 that were trying to do new marijuana legalization measures on the ballot, and that was the one state that it failed, was in Arizona. And it turns out that same company that invested $500,000 to fight the legalization of natural medicinal cannabis has turned around and introduced an FDA-approved synthesized cannabis.
Blimey.
So they were clearly trying to protect their own investments and not to help the public. They didn't.
That smells of fascism. It has to be said.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, the only way you can charge for cannabis, which is a weed that grows everywhere, is if you synthesize it, so you can patent it, and then make everything else illegal except your synthetic version, which you could charge for. Yeah, I mean, it is just big business and big money. That's all they care about. It's got nothing to do with making people better. It's all to do with cash.
So okay.
Yeah. Why do we get in trouble for growing plants in our front yard? Why do we get in trouble for growing food in our front yards? We have to have a lawn. Can't have fruit there. Why do we get in trouble for that?
Well, you're not allowed to. Are there not issues with not being allowed to take the rainwater off your roof, and you're not allowed to milk your own cow and stuff like that?
We're so free. We're so free that we're not allowed to collect our own rainwater that hits our own roof. So yeah.
I want to ask Piers a lot about Brexit as well tonight. But Michael, there's interesting parallels going on between the UK and the US, or Europe and the US, in various different ways. Basically chaos. And what Trump was going to give. What was it he said in the inauguration? I'm going to give America back to the people. I'm going to give government back to the people. Didn't he say that?
He said that in his campaign as well.
Well, what's going on? I mean, is it just a lot of U-turns? I'm seeing lots of U-turns.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, Trump, the candidate, was a split personality. I mean, one day you could catch him saying, what a great person Ted Cruz was, and another day saying, nobody likes Ted Cruz. And here he was going to parties and everything with the Clintons, and then saying, crooked Hillary Clinton, I'm going to lock her up. He told us he was going to drain the swamp, but then he starts appointing the wealthiest cabinet in the history of the United States. So I don't know how that is draining the swamp. I don't know how that's giving any power back to the people.
What's this guy Sessions doing? So is it John Sessions, the Justice? Jeff. The Justice Secretary.
It's a good question. I'd like to know that myself. During the confirmation hearings, he was asked, for example, about what would he do about the states that have enacted legalization of marijuana and medical marijuana, and he was kind of unclear on the subject, but didn't state any strong opinions against it. Then as soon as he's confirmed, he says, if you want to make sure that I don't prosecute you for cannabis use, then you really ought to get something done on the federal level, contact your legislatures and get them to make a change on the federal level, because I'm bound to enforce the federal laws. So now people are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, not knowing if their businesses that they're creating that are legal in California and Colorado and over half the country are going to be prosecuted for doing things that obviously the majority of Americans want to be legal.
You sound busy. You sound as though you could be very busy.
Well, I could be.
I mean,
yeah,
as a lawyer,
and that's the problem. I have to warn
if
people.
they're messing, well, I mean, presumably, yeah, as you say, people have been encouraged to set up business under one administration. The next one comes along and scuppers all that. Well, I'm not saying that is happening, but yeah, I heard.
But knowing
Jeff
what
Sessions
we
said that
know,
as well.
knowing what we know now about marijuana and its medicinal benefits, it's good for so many things. It's and yet
Drain the swamp.
you would have thought that if they genuinely cared about humanity and people, cared about them and wanted people to be, well and benefit from natural herbal solutions, they would let us have it. But it's clear that the world is run by corporations, and corporations are only interested in profit margins and quarterly statements. And
Trump was going to drain the swamp, Piers. He wasn't funded by anybody, really.
Yeah, but they've obviously got something on him now. They've obviously this is the way
they might have something on him, but they also just might be influencing it.
Something. I mean, what's going on?
It could be influenced. He could be being influenced, unduly influenced. I mean, the pressure he must be under as an outsider, surrounded by military-industrial complex neocons, who are breathing in his ear.
He's also getting bombarded with information and briefings, and he's got these people that represent different agencies that are coming into these briefings. They're sounding really important. They've been in their positions for many, many years. They've risen up through the CIA and the NSA and whatever other agency they're with.
Donald Trump would see through that. You would think someone like someone of his experience would see through that and say, no, you know what? This is my vision. This is what I've been elected on.
They've probably put the fear of God in him. I mean, they've seen intelligence that he hasn't seen as a civilian, and they will bombard him with this intelligence and make him believe it.
And they've got a lot of experience in trying to make people believe things. So let's take, for example, the flip-flop that he's done on Syria. Okay, during the elections, he made some statements that I agreed with, that we should just leave Assad in place. We should forget about Syria and just let them clean up ISIS. And, if anything, will help them destroy ISIS. And
he also said there would be no no-fly zone. He wouldn't impose a no-fly zone. In other words, he wouldn't antagonize Russia. Carry on, Michael. Sorry.
Right. No, it's fine. But then this intelligence comes in claiming that Assad was behind this chemical attack with no substantial evidence, but just saying that's what happened. And of course,
then saying it was classified.
Yeah, then the U.S. media runs with it as though it's an absolutely established fact, and then Trump runs with it too and does this little bombing attack.
This is when just for the benefit of the audience, this is the point of the show when we begin to get depressed. Sorry, carry on.
Well, I think everybody is depressed anyway. That's why everybody's on so much medication,
a lot of that medication, by the way, is synthesized from petroleum. So there's another.
Well, there you go. The big pharma is involved with the oil business as well. It's so true. I mean, so many of these, happy pills that people are popping liberally, left, right, and center globally now. I mean, they are destroying their natural ability to produce the necessary chemicals in their body, natural hormones and things to sort of create the state of well-being that they need, and these drugs basically completely take over and supplant that need. It basically destroys your body's ability to create hormones, and so you become completely reliant on these drugs.
And we're getting bombarded with things from soy products and from plastics that create phytoestrogen.
From soy products?
Oh, yeah. Soy products have a phytoestrogen in it. It imitates estrogen and can mess up people's bodies.
Really?
I
thought soy was supposed to be top yoga stuff.
Well, there's a little different effect of soy when you actually ferment it and create like a tofu. It has a little different effect because the fermentation which creates these probiotics that generate their own enzymes and help it to be more digestible and things. But soy in general, you've got two problems. One is that it does have a phytoestrogen effect in the body, and another problem is that about 90% of the soy grown in the United States is genetically modified. So anyway, so soy is not necessarily your best option.
No, genetically modified yoga food.
Yeah, and it's basically being, they're cutting down the rainforests in order to grow this bloody stuff. I mean, it's an absolute shocker. I mean, I do believe that when you mess with Mother Nature and you mess with the balance of things and you start to genetically modify things and add, splice in bits of DNA code into things that have evolved naturally in balance and harmony with the rest of the ecosystem on this planet, you are asking for trouble. And I don't care how much they advocate that this is a perfectly safe, valid alternative to different ways of pest control, but I just don't believe it. I mean, glyphosate, for example. I mean, is just a foul, toxic stuff. Apparently, most of California's wine has traces of glyphosate in it. I read an article the other day. What is
that? What is it?
Glyphosate. Some people pronounce it glyphosate, but it's Roundup. It's the Roundup weed killer.
What, they put it
by
in
Monsanto.
Food? Oh, because
they put it on the crops, and they also put it in the land. You get some of it seeping into groundwater and affecting even organic crops. But and California has a very high quality winery. The wine industry in California is incredible. And Californians care a lot about wine. I mean, it might as well be France with just a tiny bit less snootiness to it. But
what are you saying, Michael? We are not snooty. We are very quite our wine, but I'm sure the Californians think they make some lovely wine, but there's nothing on the stuff we produce,
Right? Yeah.
Not again. Oh no!
Is that your bottom?
Sorry. Yeah. No. I thought in your general direction, Michael.
Yeah. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelled of elderberries.
That's a great one. Leave it to you Brits to start quoting from Monty Python. But anyway, good French accents. I like them. So yeah, it's amazing because California, we not only produce a huge volume of wine here, but also about 50% of all of the crops that feed the United States that comes from California. So whatever's happening here makes a big difference on the whole rest of the country. So because we have enormous stretches of farmland. When people think of California, think of Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco. You don't really think about miles and miles, literally like hundreds of miles of farmland. But there's
Michael,
an enormous amount of farmland.
Tell me, that dam in California, is it all right? Because you've presumably just had a big dump of snow, and that's going to melt. And so is California about to, explode or something, or will it be all right? Because that dam was a bit worrying when that was in the news. It looked really.
That particular dam wouldn't affect like all of California, but it definitely would affect many human beings' lives in that area. And, I don't have personal knowledge about the stability of the dam. The part that was breaking was an overflow section. And it was being overtaxed with stress from the water pressure.
Damn, it was full. It was literally full. It was like one of those, what do they call those, infinity swimming pools?
Yeah. And they were supposed to have rebuilt it with money they received from the federal government about 15, 16 years ago that they didn't do. And they tell us, well, it's great now, but it's the government saying that. And how much do you trust government agencies, whether local, state, or federal? I don't know. But
what do you think? What's your take, Michael, on weather modification? I mean, a lot of people are, talk about chemtrails, and they talk about HAARP, and they talk about
right.
the powers that be's ability to manipulate weather. And California has been in drought for many, many years. And
yeah.
I'm a kind of a follower of Wilcox's work, and he's been talking about this, about how he said that when the rains come in California, it will be an indication that the current sort of powers that be, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, the old order of control, their power has started to wane when the rains come in California, which has obviously happened.
True.
Well, I hope so too. I mean, but
we do have a little less chemtrailing going on lately. And I am a believer in chemtrails. I know there's a huge percentage of society that doesn't believe in it and thinks you're crazy if you even say it.
I see them.
But I don't think
I know what those guys used to look like.
100 patents. You don't get more than 100 patents issued on weather modification without having intent to use it. So, and when you have scientists who are doing soil tests...
And we know they've used it in places like China. They used it for the Olympics. Right. I mean, it was all over the news. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
We've had an Air Force whistleblower. We had a guy who was an FBI chief on two different coasts of the United States who said that the chemtrailing is real. We've had scientists that are doing soil samples and testing pond water and things in the forest, who are saying they're finding huge amounts of barium, strontium, and aluminum, which fits some of the patents that are out there. And I can look up into the sky and I can see chemtrails that last.
You could see them checkerboarding the sky.
Long.
I mean,
all day long.
I mean,
I tell you what, I was in someone's garden. I was in Arno's garden, actually, in South London, and I watched this jet plane flying over the garden. We're having a barbecue, and there were no contrails, no jet contrails coming out of that jet at all. And then suddenly, one just started to appear. So it was almost like the plane had suddenly just turned something on, and it was suddenly drawing this thick, trail.
That's exactly what it was.
So it literally came on out of nowhere.
That's hard to say, because if it's not a chemtrail, if it's a true contrail, they can kind of come on and off depending upon atmospheric conditions. But I have seen a plane producing a contrail which was short and was disappearing a short distance behind the jet. I've seen it fly through that was persisting for hours, so you're in the same atmospheric conditions, and it's flying right through the chemtrails that are hanging there for hours. So you know that it's not just atmospheric conditions, and for these contrails, for those who think that they're just contrails and not chemtrails, for them to persist all day. I mean, we're talking, 16, 18 hours they stay up there.
Absolutely. Slowly dissipating and turning into clouds. And just a sort of a sheet cloud that it ultimately envelops the sky. And it happens here in Valencia, over the Mediterranean. I see it every other day, every third day, something like that. And then I'll see it for day in, day out. And then I won't see it at all for a few days. And it's just peculiar.
Yeah, I mean, the sky is either...
It's like a checkerboard. It's like a checkerboard. It's like Keith Richards went to heaven and he's doing a load of coke. It's just gone. It's bloody
crisscross of Charlie.
That's exactly what I would expect him to do if he went to heaven.
So. God's on Charlie. Somebody has to be. I think we're coming up to a break. I think. I'll tell you, this chemtrails, it's really good. Michael Finlay, he's got a lot of info. It's not bad for the guy dealing the weed down at the county court. I think we've got a break. I'll tell you what, I'm going to get caught out here.
You haven't. We're a bit. I think you're a bit premature calling it, dude. It's like you know, you've launched too early, which is obviously a sort of the story of your life, really.
Well, premature, are we?
He's prematurely launched, but you have been married for nearly 20 years, so you must be doing something right.
You could pick it up, mate. I tell you.
Next up, his wife will be on with us. Seriously.
After the break, we should address the topic. We probably should. We political chicane. No, we did a bit. There's more. Piers, I want to ask you more about this election as well, because this is.
I'm no expert, but I mean, I can throw my oar in. We can all discuss it. I mean, it's going
to be upended. It might be up. That's a break. Oops. Oh, sorry.
Mike Harris.
That's right here on Revolution Radio.
Hi. Whoa. Thank you. Yes, we're back. Yes, indeed. You're listening to Revolution Radio. This is Jingly Jangly. I'm Olly Connelly. We got Piers Garnham here. We got Michael Finlay here, and my head is almost here. But I tell you what, I almost got caught out there. I was taking a pee, and I so nearly didn't make it, and I nearly peed myself. But I'm all right. Everything's fine. And
You're not wearing your radio jock nappies, Ollie. I told you to put on your diaper, as the Americans like to call it. We gotta use American terminology here. I think we should call them diapers right now. So you gotta wear your jock diaper. Radio jock diaper. Make sure you don't get me. You're at the age now, man, when things just leak. It's just.
You're okay. You've got one of these radio mics. You go off and just take.
Yeah, I have. I've got a Bluetooth microphone, so I can disappear upstairs and do everything like on the quiet, or at least try and be quiet.
Yeah,
and
flush the loop.
Yeah, man.
Just a bit of a giveaway.
I'm doing my American accent so I can try and garner some work in Hollywood. It's like, Hollywood, if you're listening, give me a job, man. I can do South as well as you like. I don't know. You want me to talk like
you
I'm
do good South.
Like down there, I can do that too. But anyway, sorry. Yes.
And here I am with nothing but an empty milk jug for my appearance.
Well,
can you do me?
You might fill it up by the end of the show, and I've done that too before now.
Can you do any accents or impersonations? I can do a little bit of Sean Connery. It's like if I was to take a job acting now, it would cost Steven Spielberg about $30 million for 5 minutes. Anyway.
Well, I used
don't know
to
if that was
be
any
a
good.
pretty serviceable Bill Clinton. I feel your pain. So
Actually, you do sound a bit like Bill Clinton.
and
God,
I can also. There are several different Southern accents. I can do a lot of different Southern accents and things. But you have your Texas accents. You have your Oklahoma accents. You have your Alabama. You got Louisiana. There's several different Southern accents. So
can you do Forrest Gump? I'm from Greenbow, Alabama.
I love you, Jenny.
Oh wow!
Jenny and me was like peas and carrots again.
That's pretty good.
Everywhere I went after that, I was running.
Actually, you know what? Tom Hanks was on British TV the other day, and they made him do those lines on this chat show. And being the good sport that he is, he actually did it as well. It was quite.
I bet that was Graham Norton, wasn't it?
It was Graham Norton. Yes. Graham Norton just seems to be able to pull pretty much anything he wants out of his guests. It's Graham. I don't know if you've seen Graham Norton, Michael. He's
I have.
Hold on. Yeah.
He's good. Sorry.
He's great. No, he's great. He's great. He's fantastic. But look, Piers, I am curious. I want to know, and I'm wondering what Michael can add to this as well. What is this election about in the UK? Is because basically the UK folks said we want Brexit. That's what they said. Well, 52%. And so then she goes, yeah, I'll do that. Fine. We'll deliver that. And now she's changing tack and she's calling for an election. So there's room for a lot of political chicanery here.
Yes, there most certainly is. In essence, if the other parties bang together and join forces and oust the Tories, the majority of the Labour, Liberal, and all the other lot were, and the Scottish National Party. They are all very pro-Europe. So, Corbyn called the three-line whip and basically forced his politicians to vote for, to allow Article 50 to be ratified. But that was because Corbyn does believe in the process of democracy. And actually, I think Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, he does actually...
He wanted to go with what was decided at the referendum.
He wanted to go with what was decided at the referendum. And I think he personally had doubts about the effectiveness of Europe himself. The question is now, what's he going to say about his stance on Brexit?
This guy's the opposition leader, Corbyn, the opposition leader.
So he's the opposition leader. He's a bit of a sort of, he looks like a geography teacher or a sort of archaeology professor or something. He's got a beard. He wears tweed jackets. He probably smells of cabbage. He looks like a bit of an old kind of rather bored, lame old kind of teacher who's managed to survive on a pittance of a salary.
He looks like a history teacher.
He looks like
in his 70s, in his 60s. He does.
He is, yeah.
A very lovely guy, a lovely bloke. Don't get me wrong.
But he is. He's one of those rare breeds.
He's not exactly Tony Blair, kind of like Mr. Dynamism. I mean, don't get me wrong. I can't stand Tony Blair. He's a war criminal, but he's not got that kind of dynamic, liability about him.
No, he hasn't. He's not charismatic. He's dull, which doesn't make him great as a sort of front man for a party.
But he's honest.
Well, he is honest. He is honest. But he's not very good at sort of being forthright in terms of his decision making. He's a bit he can flim flam a bit. He's not very good at sort of.
He has been hammered by the press though, because it's actually a voice for the people. And that's very, very rare in British politics. He's the first one as an opposition or a PM, one of those two positions. In all my lifetime, there hasn't been anybody that's been for the people. Maybe John Smith, before Tony Blair and the Blairites took over Labour.
We've got the first round. I think what's going to be more important.
He's kind of like Bernie Saunders. He's kind of like a British Bernie Saunders.
Yeah, yes, I suppose in a way he is. Yeah, I think Bernie Saunders is far more charismatic than Jeremy Corbyn, and that's saying something. I mean, Bernie Saunders is hardly the most charismatic of individuals, but Jeremy Corbyn is. Yeah, he's. I mean, he's not a natural leader.
But the point is that he has no support, and so whatever he says is he's not going to win the seats. Theresa May, the Prime Minister, she's called this election. She's going to get a shed load more seats now because she's 21 points ahead of the opposition. 21 points. It's like a wet dream.
I think Corbyn will have to stick to his guns and insist that democracy is upheld and that the referendum result is adhered to and Article 50 remains in place. We do need strong leadership right now because we do need somebody who can negotiate with the Europeans who are, the reason why they're asking for these vast amounts of money in terms of like a divorce settlement.
They want 60 billion, they reckon.
Well, 90 billion plus, I think, but yeah. But the reason they're asking for these astronomical sums is because they're bankrupt, basically. What's going to be more interesting, and the first stage of which happens, I think, this coming weekend, is the first stage of the French elections. I think they operate on more of a similar system to the American elections, where you go through sort of primaries and then the front runners are then go to the front runners go to the general election or whatever. And I think the first stage of these primaries is this weekend. So this is
Marine Le Pen, isn't it?
Marine Le Pen and Macron are sort of neck and neck tied in the polls. It's going to be, I think, realistically speaking, that result is going to be really, very interesting. I don't know whether I don't know the dates of the actual general election.
Hold on, but who's going to win? Basically, we're going to see, who is it? It's Macron, who is basically a French Blair, and it's Fillon, who is a crook, who his wife's a crook too, and they are known to be crooks.
I'm a crook, and so's my wife.
Yeah, and yeah, the French are still the conservative equivalent sort of thing, the Sarkozy party, are still going for them, despite the fact that they're crooks and they're known crooks. It doesn't seem to matter. They are still supported. So it's either going to be Fillon or Macron, who is the socialist kind of, not really socialist, but really a Blair type socialist. In other words, a conservative. Or it's going to be Marine Le Pen, or it's going to be this hard socialist communist type character who's shaken things up, and Mélenchon or something. And so it is a very close race between those four to get into the second round.
I mean, Macron and Le Pen are streaks ahead in the polls. All the others have been left in the dust, actually. It does seem to be a two-horse race between Macron and Le Pen.
I think it's closed up a bit.
Well, maybe it has.
I saw some likely outcome. Sure.
I saw some polls earlier on today that have been posted in the last.
Macron, won't it? Because that's what happens in France. They shore up, and they'll keep out whoever they don't want by the left and the right teaming up together. So Macron and Fillon, whichever of them lose, one of them will go through into the second round, probably opposite Marine Le Pen, and then they will kind of shore up their base. And
the whole of the European Union recipe depends on the French election, really. If Le Pen was to be elected, then basically that's the end of the European Union. They couldn't.
She wants a referendum on it.
Well, they couldn't have. Well, if she got elected, she'd call a referendum on Europe, and then obviously, if she'd won the premiership, then she'll obviously get the vote on the referendum as well. One would assume. If she gets in, then the EU is finished, and they know it. And this is why they're cornered. I think it is unlikely, and obviously because of the importance of the French election, that makes it very prone to all kinds of tomfoolery and and fraud and rigging, because it's their kind of last stand. It's like Custer's last stand. It's that if the European Union are going to be going all guns to sort of make sure that Le Pen doesn't get in, and they'll use any crooked means necessary in order to rig the elections. I think. To sway the vote. You see, I think a lot of regional French are fed up with the situation in France. They've seen their industries and their jobs taken from them.
It's actually very like the Rust Belt in the US. In France, they have the Rust Belt too, the steel workers, and they are all going for Le Pen in the way that they did in Michigan for Trump.
Yeah, that's right. But obviously, the powers that be are going to do everything in their power to be able to try and stop this from happening. So let's assume that they achieve their goal because their tentacles spread far and their influence spreads far, and it is all a bit Masonic and a bit funny handshake, throughout Europe as well as in America, and these tentacles do stretch far, and people can be controlled and told to behave in certain ways and manipulate certain things, because they're part of the club and they're duty bound to adhere to whatever they're being told to do by their seniors on.
Michael, what are you being fed stateside about the French election? And have you heard anything about this British election? And do you hear much about Brexit?
I have, but mainly because I follow a little different news sources than what the average Americans follow. Because
Sure.
Really, in America, we don't get a huge amount of international news on average. And
Incredible.
When we do, there's just a tiny bit in there. I mean, it's like America is so narcissistic that we just focus on America. And then, how good are we doing at bombing the rest of the world? But as far as
USA,
as far as France goes, I've seen some interesting things about this election and what's going on with it. I'm also curious what you think about the claims by many people in France that as France goes, so does the European Union. So, if France leaves the European Union,
Piers is right. He's absolutely right.
They're too financially bankrupt to survive a state the size of France leaving. I mean, it's not the French economy's in the doldrums. The Italian economy is
survive the UK leaving. Piers.
Well, they can't. They can't really, and that's why they're trying to.
No, a fifth of their budget. I think they just lost.
Well, yeah. I mean,
something like that.
Well, it's They sell.
No, it's not that much. Sorry, but it is about 12% or something. Is it 15%? Oh, I don't know.
It is a large proportion of the EU income. I mean, they export a hell of a lot more to the UK than we import from them, and hundreds of billions of pounds a year. And it's a vital trade link, and it's all been so.
The thing is that this money, the way it works, a lot of people won't know how it works, but basically the EU takes money from the member states. There are 28 of them. 27 off the back of Brexit, but 28 for now. And they take money off them, and then they divvy it up back to those states, having bought lots of bottles of wine to put in their wine cellar in Brussels, and yes, and they do that, but what they do is they try to be fair about it. So the nation states that are wealthier, such as Germany and the UK and the Netherlands and France, pay more than the nation states that are poorer, such as Bulgaria, Romania, Czechoslovakia, and Greece, evidently.
It's not called Czechoslovakia anymore. It's called the Czech Republic now.
Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah. And yes, and so they do this divvying up, and they do all sorts of kind of calculations over it. But some states, they do pay out a lot, and not a lot comes back. And this has been a big thing in the UK. It's like, well, it's all very well with paying a net contribution of 8 billion a year. They reckon it's whittled down to, off the back of all the trying to work out what that figure is. But it's reckoned to be about 8 billion a year net, and the net gain is not that good. It's not. Well, it's nothing. It's trade, the ability to trade. But couldn't you trade without it anyway? And so
Of course you can. Of course you can. But the thing is, the reason why they're all up in arms about it is because they're all in league with the corporations, and they've all basically decided between themselves who trades with who does what business with who, and how much money we make between us chums. You know, that's why they're. Isn't it? That's why.
We just go back to the EEC. We had a trade body before. What really has the EU done that's made it worthwhile? I mean,
but the problem we've got is, I wanted to leave Europe because I think it's thoroughly corrupt, and it's a boys' club for the mega rich.
We're all going to Iceland.
But I wanted to leave. But at the same time, we've still got to be aware that our own politicians are a bent, corrupt bunch of yobbos, and it's sort of.
But they're closer to home, so.
Well, they are. That's what I always argued. I said we at least we can fight our own politicians on our own, on a home turf. We can.
At least we speak the same language too. I mean, from the point of view of understanding what they mean.
Well,
really.
What did you try to say earlier? Well, you do not understand me. I speak the English perfectly well. But you live in Spain, mate, and so I mean, you're surrounded by people that don't understand you. So it's sort of like well, actually, most of them speak English, don't they? I mean, anyway, but
yeah. No, yes, absolutely. I'll tell you what. Also, I don't. Well, no, I mean it's another thing, but yeah, I do. I mean, it's the Europe is not good. The way I see it, the EU is not good, not just for the UK, but for any European people, for the simple reason that it is not good with its money. It's throwing it around. It's not accountable, and most importantly, you do not have much of a democratic voice. If you want, for example, you get these MEPs here, like you have congressmen in the US. MEPs are not allowed to introduce legislation. They're not allowed to introduce motions, anything like that. All of the law that's brought into the EU, that's brought into the Eurozone countries, is brought in by technocrats that decide we want laws that appertain to, I don't know, how big a chocolate bar should be, or maybe it's something to do with carbon footprints, something, or whatever it is, anything. There are 50,000 laws that I think that we have been imposed upon us as member states from the EU now, something like tens of thousands anyway. And these laws are introduced by technocrats, unelected, and then the people that you do get to vote for, they are basically there to rubber stamp those policies, to pass those into law, but they're not allowed to introduce laws from their constituents. So what's the point of that?
Well, they're all very heavily paid. They're all paid a fortune. I mean, the EU Parliament is it's all bribery. If you're an MEP or you're working at the European Parliament, you're on a massive salary. You get so many benefits. They've got their own shopping mall, their own salons and masseuses and places to go and coif their hair. It's like living in some sort of weird little bubble of luxury and.
Well, you could say that's a bit like DC, or you could say that's a bit like Westminster.
Well,
in fact, the House of Lords, for example, is a bit like that.
Why would any MEP or the majority of them are happy with that recipe? Because it makes their lives very easy. So, I mean, it's totally and utterly corrupt, and it's a club for the corporations. I think you're
absolutely. It is a boys' club, isn't it?
It is a boys' club. They all work for the corporations and banks. And the banks dictate policy to them and say this is what we want these trade agreements, and so they basically put all those into place. So all the big businesses do business with each other, and they tie the whole thing up, and don't allow member states to trade outside the areas that they dictate, or they throw in massive, tariffs on products that are being imported from outside the EU. It's totally bent and corrupt, and that's what I voted against. I didn't vote against the freedom of movement. I actually think that's rather nice, and I like the idea of Europeans or member states being able to move around, work in each other's countries. But
that needs to be controlled too, Piers. And we saw it tonight on the streets of Paris with another police officer being killed.
But those aren't
like happened in Westminster.
Those are
but mind you, that
coming from outside the EU zone. This is, as we've discussed before. This plays into the globalist recipe. We've talked about this before. I mean, they bomb the crap out of the Middle East indiscriminately, killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of innocent people who then get fed up and leave, looking to try and find some semblance of normality and stability in their lives. They come to Western Europe. We are duty bound from a moral and ethical standpoint to offer them safe harbour from the war-torn zones that we've ultimately created ourselves, but at the same time they come from a radically different culture and background from ourselves, and that means that when the two cultures clash, there's going to be trouble.
Michael is thumping that keypad.
Oh, sorry. So
he's playing Minesweeper again.
Not this time, but I am good at it.
But it does. I mean, we are. It's a double-edged sword. In many respects, we should be offering safe harbor, but at the same time, it plays into the globalist recipe, because when you introduce a radically different ideology, culture, background, religion into Western Europe and start diluting the nationalist spirit that exists in those countries, flooding those countries with people from other radically different other countries with totally different mindsets, that you start to impinge and threaten the identity of the nation as a whole. And that's ultimately what they want. And they know that a lot of these people, these migrants coming in, have lost family members in war zones, and are very bitter, very, very angry, having lost, friends and family. And then you end up having riots and rapings and muggings and then you have terrorist attacks for the truly radicalized, and it causes chaos, which is ultimately, I think, what they want, because order out of chaos. The old.
This is the Codenhove Kalergi plan or something, isn't it?
You create an unholy mess, and when things have got so bad, you offer the solution, and because everybody's so terrified and put upon by the anarchy in the streets, they'll basically adhere to whatever recipe you dictate to them. So that's the way they operate, and I do. You see. My friends, still seem to sort of stick doggedly to the European ideology, and just totally fail to see how they're being played. And it's just, to me,
sorry, hold on. What is the EU ideology? What is it?
Well, it's about peace and tranquility and freedom of movement. And
don't go back into another European war.
Yeah, exactly. They will use.
That's going to fail. That has failed, because we have a European war on our shores. This war on terror has now, it's big time in Europe. The amount of terrorist atrocities going on in Europe, it's one a week at least. In the States, Michael, there's nothing like as much terrorism, war on terror type.
Supposedly, we had an attack in Fresno just a few days ago, with 3 people killed, gunmen shouting Allahu Akbar.
I know. Yeah, I know.
So,
don't get me wrong. It's happening there too. Here, it's happening so much. It's crazy.
Yeah, but how much of it is legitimate and how much of it is false flags? Because anybody with tan skin and dark hair and brown eyes who screams Allahu Akbar, everyone's going to assume that they're ISIS. So, My hair is not quite dark enough, but I could darken my hair a bit and go out and pass for that too. So go out and get a good tan. Now, I'm not suggesting that I do any terrorist attacks. I think terrorism is an absolute horrific thing, but I just don't buy into every single terrorist attack. You know?
No, neither do I. And neither do I buy into a lot of the shootings that go on in the States. These right. These indiscriminate mass killings with assault rifles and things. I do think we're being. You see, what people have got to get into their skulls is that the powers that be are psychopathic. They really will. They don't give a jot whether they kill innocent people. If
what you guys were just alluding to was mind control, yeah? Because I mean, these guys, they have been carrying out atrocities, so they have been doing. Somebody's been doing it. But you're suggesting that they are being controlled by, and indeed, I mean, the indoctrination is intense, and
it's
the
not
Wahhabists. The sound is not
sure. We know for sure that the Obama administration was handing out assault rifles to rebels in Syria. They were handing out assault rifles to rebels in Egypt to overthrow Mubarak. They were handing out assault rifles to people in Libya to overthrow Gaddafi. We know for sure that they had this Fast and Furious scandal in which they were distributing assault rifles along the Mexican border to, some kind of border criminals. Could be drug runners, could be coyotes that illegally bring in immigrants. And we know that an American border agent was killed with one of those rifles, and yet they're telling us that the average American cannot be trusted with weapons. So, there's
Fast
an enormous amount of
how on earth was that not a massive scandal? I mean, to the point, it was Eric Holder, wasn't it? I mean,
the media did very little reporting on it.
Yeah.
Most of Americans don't even know that there was such a scandal. Most Americans have no clue that Eric Holder was the first sitting attorney general to be held in contempt of Congress for refusing to produce records of
Kim Kardashian's hip size.
Right.
Just.
But that's you get them on the happy pills, and you feed them the Kardashians, and their mind is awash. But it's the same in the UK as well. There are so many people who are just so uninformed, but then again there are a lot of people out there that are informed, and we can't insult the general public too much, because there is a lot of intelligence out there.
Well, it's not the public's fault, most of it. I mean, you said earlier,
they have been manipulated.
Tired and
they are
working, paying tax till 2-3 in the afternoon, just earning a few hours worth of money for their family, and then going home and feeding them, maybe doing some homework, putting them to bed, flopping out in front of, ironically, Big Brother. I mean, people are tired, and it's actually so easy when you think think about to control.
I don't know if you two have noticed a sort of downturn in the sort of Facebook traffic. I think Facebook has sort of quietened down a little bit, and I think that's largely due to the fact that people are just got really kind of tired of it all now, and they're all thinking, I'm reaching a kind of point of overload, and I'm just fed up, and I'm just going to take a back seat with the whole thing and not look at Facebook as much, because I don't know about you, but I some of the feeds that I get coming into my Facebook page, some of the footage that comes into my feed is just horrific, and I can't watch it. I don't want to be looking at beheadings and people being burnt and tortured and whipped and raped and all this sort of stuff, because we live in an age now where everybody has a video camera in their pocket, and they can post whatever they like, whatever atrocities they want online, and not all of it gets filtered out, and a lot of it does end up coming through into people's feeds, depending on what sites they've liked, and I think I'm going to have to sort of trash a few of them, because I know it goes on. I just don't need to be seeing it. That's
right.
And when you do, It is very hard to take, and you know, I'm not saying that I'm denying these things happen as a result of not looking at them. I just don't.
The
want
thing
to
is, you in your case, I think you know. In Michael's case, I think he knows. It is. How often do you take a break from Facebook, Michael? Do you have a little break every now and then?
Oh, if I do, it's only for a day or two, really, because I'm sharing a lot of things on there. Now, sometimes I might share things, but not actually spend any actual time on it, because I'll be reading some news. I do a lot of research. I read a lot of news daily, and I might come across something interesting, and I hit a share button, and I share it to Facebook. I share it to Twitter, and then move on. And I might not actually have logged into Facebook or Twitter that day, but it still looks like I'm active because I shared something. So
that's the way I operate now. You know, you're an erudite man with a good sweeping general knowledge, and you can inform and educate. You know, you do the research, as you say, and you have a good following on social media. So therefore, you know, the things you choose to share with people can be prolificated out, and you know, people can learn from what you post, and they trust what you post because they know who you are. You know, and I like to think that that's my approach now. I'm looking at it less, but I'm just approaching it as a means to sort of disseminate what it is I want to sort of say, you know, just to sort of illuminate, you know, with whatever I'm thinking about or have looked at, and it's just a good way of just offloading that on a body of people that are following you or are friends with you.
Do you not think, though, guys, there's a danger, though, if we don't communicate with each other? It's one thing sharing, but it's the common touch is to have a bit of a chat as well. And I know it doesn't happen very often because, of course, you know, everyone's busy. But if you don't do any of that, then ultimately it's kind of like a screen. It's like a ticker board that nobody really
but I mean,
everybody
ends up not looking at.
If you're all news all the time, then people don't feel a connection with you as a human being. So that's why every once in a while I share something a little bit personal, you know, a picture of being out to dinner with my mother, a picture of me with my motorcycle, that kind of thing. Some comment I make about opinions about things. And then, you know, you still connected with people. So I do think that's important.
You respond to, if people respond to in the comments section about, you know, some post of yours, you're in the habit of giving them some feedback and reciprocating. I mean,
as much as I can. There's some days where I'm way too busy to do that. So
no, but I mean, I follow you, Michael, and I think, you know, the stuff you post is of great interest and you know, of good value. In the same way that I think what Olly posts is of great interest and good value. You know, it's like and this is why we choose to follow, you know, people like ourselves, because we are reasonably knowledgeable about a broad scope of things. I mean, you know, I like to go down the conspiratorial route, which obviously sort of you know, annoys the hell out of a lot of the people I'm friends with on Facebook. You know, it's like, oh my God, Piers is going off on one of his mad rants again about, you know,
aliens.
Aliens and you know, whatever it might be. And but you know, that's just an area of research. You know, I do a lot of research into that stuff, or have in the past, and still do to a certain degree. And sometimes your mind gets clogged up with it, and a good way of offloading is just to sort of write some of what you've learned down and then stick it on social media, just to sort of see how, you know, what kind of reaction it gets. And
fake news.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think the world is so much.
No, I'm joking. I know,
idea. But I do think the world is so much stranger than anybody could possibly imagine. I really do believe that. I really do believe we're living in a bubble of lies and BS. You know, I really do. I think the last 100 years at least has been just almost one giant fabrication. You know, I think the motivation and reasoning behind wars and financial crashes has all been one giant manipulation. And I'm just wondering if we're ever going to actually.
We're at the stage where that's so transparent. It's so obvious. Is it not? I mean,
well, not to
me,
everybody.
It was clear what was the deal with Iraq. It was clear what was the deal with Libya. It is clear. It's pretty clear what is the deal with Syria. It's pretty clear to me. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure what's going on with Yemen, what was happening in Bahrain, and
it was always on the table, wasn't it?
It's like, and conversely, it seems like what happened in Tunisia, for example, maybe was a more natural, organic thing, and maybe it was stirred up a bit. But I mean, but why aren't people? Why are we still putting up with this? I mean, when Vietnam happened, there were all those students on the streets getting their boobs out. It was wonderful. And now, where's the protest? Where's the protest? It's like people are more
and
worried.
The information is not getting out there too. I mean, for example, most of mainstream media, including pretty much all of the mainstream in the United States and the BBC, and even some of the international media that we don't necessarily think of as mainstream, like Al Jazeera, didn't even bother to cover the horrific things that were done by the rebels in Syria just a few days ago, where they lured in about 60 kids with a car full of potato chips and then blew it up, killing about 60 children and anywhere from 40 to 60 other adults that were loaded on buses there was an agreement for them to be able to evacuate from some rebel-held cities in Syria. And instead, the rebels set this up and just lured in children and then blew up the children and blew up this bus.
Yeah, it was in Aleppo. Yeah,
and it's not even covered. And so, I come across this stuff because I do check alternative news sources, and then I double check it. And the only solid American source I could find was NPR had a short article on it. I got the information through a group called wearechange.org. They've been pretty valid for the things they report, but I know that a lot of my friends on Facebook won't accept what they say. So sometimes I share straight from We Are Change, and sometimes I share whatever other source I use to.
I like Luke Radowski. He's really good. I've
met him in person.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. He seems like a decent guy.
Yeah, I agree. I met
him last year.
Did you? Where? At some conference or something?
March Against Monsanto, technically March for Organics in Canoga Park, California, which I'm actually speaking at this year, May 20th.
Excellent.
So I was just there as one of the protesters, and he showed up with some friends, and I got a chance to meet him in person. So he seemed like a decent guy, but I talked to him for like 10 minutes, So,
what are you going to be talking about, Michael?
I'm going to be talking about the benefits of organic food and the importance of avoiding genetically modified products and ways that you can determine what is genetically modified or not. I'll be talking about the large mass of evidence that's piling up that GMOs are not producing better crop yields, and that glyphosate, Roundup, is, even the World Health Organization with the United Nations did a study and determined that it's a carcinogen. So, there's lots and lots of evidence piling up that it's better to just grow organic foods, which is pretty much how things used to be. I'm talking about the problems that can happen even from things that are not genetically modified. A lot of the fertilizers that are artificial are, again, synthesized from petroleum products. Is that really what we want our food to be produced from? And is that really what we want to be putting into our bodies?
And it's probably causing the bee die off as well. These genetically modified crops and all these disgusting, horrible, the
neonicotinoid.
The nicotinoids. Yeah, God, jeez, man. I mean, the amount of crap
introduced. I mean, we used to have huge runs of monarch butterflies through California. I mean, we'd see them by the thousands come flying through, Now, I can't even remember seeing a monarch for a couple of years. Like 80% of the butterflies in the United States are gone, and a huge percentage of the bees are gone.
Yeah, and that is a serious worry, because obviously they are used as a means of fertilization. I mean, and it does seem, if you're looking at it from a conspiratorial point of view, that they're sort of deliberately creating a sort of situation where there will be some sort of giant famine at some point. I mean, they're chemically, poisoning the environment and killing off these little critters that we vitally need, and have you heard of you've heard of the Georgia Guidestones? I mean, they've got that sort of monolithic structure in Georgia that's been built and it's written in 15 different languages, and it basically talks about reducing the, it's carved into these granite monoliths.
Kill us all.
Yeah, basically reduce the world's
500 million.
To 500 million. Yeah. In perpetual balance with nature. I mean, it's all very much about rebalancing nature, but the idea is to knock hell out of the human population, and that is and does seem to be the philosophy of the people in power at the moment.
Who gets to decide which 8.5 billion people have to die? That's my question.
Kissinger. He decided.
I'm pretty sure they're not.
We're all useless eaters.
That's right. Kissinger refers to humanity, and actually, even David Attenborough has called humanity a plague on Earth, and in a way, we are. We are an abomination in many respects, and we could go down all kinds of conspiratorial avenues in relation to that. But then
again, that doesn't mean that you basically commit genocide against practically the entire human race. I mean, that's kind of immoral.
But you see, the thing is,
like Michael said, who decides?
Yeah, look at what we've been talking about earlier on tonight. We've been talking about alternative means of power and energy. It does seem obvious that there are, perfectly viable, non-polluting ways to advance
with sustainability.
We could easily sustain a population of 7.5, 8 billion people on this planet if they chose to give us the technology. The fact of the matter is, they cannot bear the idea of being deposed from their power. And they would rather kill the majority of us off and then let nature revert back to find its natural balance again, with them still in control. That's ultimately what they want. They cannot bear the idea of having their crowns, taken from them, being pulled from their thrones and brought down to the basic level of the rest of us. They can't stand that. It's the power that corrupts. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and it does. And they'd rather murder us all than lose their power. But personally, I don't think this is going to happen. I think the tide has changed. I think there are a huge amount of machinations going on behind the scenes, and a lot of the headlines are largely designed just to sort of deflect us from other things that are going on.
Okay, one example then. North Korea, is that a deflection? I mean, apparently the ships weren't even sailing towards North Korea or something. I read earlier, and was that a nonsense story, or do we have to worry? I mean, it's true. This guy's a nutter, isn't he? Maybe they're both nutters. I don't know.
I have no idea. See, I've never been to North Korea. I've never met Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
We're told a whole bunch of stuff about him, and based on what we're told, he sounds horrible. Okay, he sounds like a horrible man. But how much of that is propaganda, and how much of it is legitimate? And let's look at something here. Just for 1 second, think about this. The U.S. and the U.K. are testing missiles all the time. Okay, we test missiles all the time. Okay, so why is it such a big deal when North Korea tests a missile? Not only are we testing missiles, but we have an exercise that we conduct with South Korea, a joint military exercise every year called Foal Eagle. F-O-A-L, foal, like a young horse, eagle. Okay, that's done every year. Americans know nothing about this exercise. Okay,
who's that
now? It's a joint military exercise conducted with South Korea It's the United States and South Korea conduct this exercise every year. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, because we're conducting military exercises all the time. I mean, we conduct them all over the place. But is it possible that might be something that's intimidating to North Korea, that we're doing these exercises in South Korea right next to them? And I don't know all the details of the exercise, but Americans are told nothing about the full Eagle exercises. We make no big deal about the missile tests we do all the time, but he fires off a test missile, and oh my goodness, that crazy guy Kim Jong-un is testing another missile. Okay.
He's a shill. They need Dr. Evils. They need Dr. Evil characters around the world so they can proliferate the arms.
Evil, isn't he?
They need. Bin Laden was another Dr. Evil.
He's probably Mike Myers.
It's like in Iron Man 3, they had a character called the Mandarin, who was a British actor who was playing this. Yeah, he was playing this sort of uber terrorist, just in the same frame of Bin Laden. They need these.
Was fantastic.
Yeah, he was. He was very funny in that film. He's just surrounded by hookers and drinking beer, and watching Manchester United on the television. Right. It was hilarious, but that's basically what these guys are. They're just characters that the military-industrial complex need in order to justify the proliferation of arms and all the rest of it. Plus, North Korea is probably one of the biggest opium producers. Would you believe? And a lot of the black budget, Afghanistan. North Korea, other parts of the Middle East, huge heroin producers. Plus, we all know that the CIA have been in bed with the cartels in South America. I mean, they have sprays that they can spray on.
So is the DEA, and when you have Pablo Escobar's son claiming that his father was working with the CIA all this time. When you have DEA getting busted for partying with drugs and alcohol and hookers provided by cartels, you've got just so much nonsense going on. But a lot of these supposed, vicious, evil dictators, we put in power in the first place. I mean, Saddam Hussein would never have been the head of Iraq if the CIA hadn't put him there. Until he had CIA backing, he had tried to do a coup and he failed. And he had to flee the country for about a decade, and then he comes back in with CIA backing and is able to kill people off and take over the country. He was our U.S.-backed dictator for decades, and it wasn't until he started doing things that we didn't want him to do that all of a sudden, he's a bad guy. Okay,
Michael,
he gassed his own people before, with gas that the CIA provided him.
There are still people in the UK that are trying to have Tony Blair testify on oath about this whole thing, and basically to take him to court and to say, look, you're a war criminal, and to see some justice. There are still people doing it, and the British government is protecting Tony Blair and talking about immunity and all that kind of stuff. We're getting news stories about it just this week, on both sides of that story. Just this week, for example. The ramifications have not gone away from what happened in Iraq and indeed in Afghanistan. We've got the heroin addicts on our streets, and there's an epidemic in the US as well as in the UK. And we know that there was no heroin production under the Taliban. Anyway, just a couple of aside.
I mean, we all know that Wesley Clark, four-star General Wesley Clark was told that this was the mission. You go in, you take over a country, you depose the current administration, you instill your own despot leader, who's under American control, and then take over the financials and the resources. That's been the modus operandi all along. And now you're hearing in the mainstream media, demonizing Assad, demonizing Iran. Syria and Iran were two of the main countries on the list that Wesley Clark was talking about. Why can't people see that this has been their agenda all along? You know,
and it looks as though Trump is carrying out the same agenda now.
He is. Whether or not he's been, blackmailed or coerced and has been, had the frighteners put on
misinformed.
him. Yeah, misinformed. He's being bombarded left, right, and centre. I mean, let's face it. Most presidents are just puppets and voices, really. I mean, they're just there to vox pop. But he's
got some people around him that he respects. What happened with Steve Bannon, Michael? He seemed to lose respect for Steve Bannon, or Jared Kushner seems to have maybe gained the momentum there. Or
isn't Kushner married to his daughter?
Yeah,
I mean, didn't he buy 666?
And he seems to be in charge of everything.
He bought some building in New York that has the number that's number 666. I don't know.
There's been such an effort to discredit Bannon, and honestly, his own past didn't help with that issue because he did have a reputation as an ultra-right person. And frankly, I don't like him, but he was still saying, let's keep our hands off of Syria at least. So I agree with him on that issue. So it's amazing when this person that I personally think of as a bit too far right for me, this alt-right movement, I think is basically Nazism under a new name. And yet he says something that I agree with and think is a voice of reason about keeping our hands off of Syria. So it's so hard to cut through the nonsense nowadays. Now, how much of what we hear about Steve Bannon is exaggerated to discredit him in the media, I don't know. But honestly, it's working with me because I don't trust Steve Bannon, except that I'm glad that he said, let's keep our hands off of Syria. But he's not getting his voice heard with the president anymore. So,
okay, but just
do you follow,
to wrap, Michael? Piers, go on, quick. Go on,
just
mate.
Quickly, I mean, do you guys follow Benjamin Fulford? I mean, I don't think he gets everything right, but he used to be the former East-West correspondent at Forbes magazine, editor, I think. And now he's a bit of a kind of radical loony who posts a blog every Monday, and I read that, and I do post it on, I do post it on Facebook sometimes. Perhaps I shouldn't, but
I like
yeah, but
I don't know whether it's just entertaining or what. But he's very interesting.
I do think there are elements of truth to his philosophy. I mean, I do think he's beating the same beat as Wilcock.
Quickly.
Okay,
Michael, do you think will Trump end up being a president who holds true to his mandate, or will he basically just throw his mandate away?
He's already thrown some of his mandate away. I don't think that is he really trying to jail crooked Hillary Clinton anymore? Is he really trying to drain the swamp? I don't think that those were things that he really believed. I think those were things that he said to get elected, as a lot of politicians do. This is nothing new with Trump. It doesn't make Trump a horrible president or a horrible politician any more than it did for anybody else. But frankly, they're all horrible because none of them keep their promises. He's not the first one to do that. When he came into office, some of the things he said he was going to do, he clearly tried to do. And some of them were things that, of course, I didn't want him to do, like backing the Dakota Access Pipeline. But
I've got to cut you off, mate. Piers, quickly, do you think that Theresa May, do you think that she's going to take advantage of Brexit? Do you think that she's going to basically dump down Brexit off the back with this election? Is it a ploy? Very quickly.
I honestly don't know, but there is all I can say is that...
Okay, thank you. God bless you, Piers. God bless you, Michael Finlay. God bless you. This has been Jingly Jangly. I've been Olly Connelly. This is Revolution Radio. We have Michael Harris coming up with the short end of the stick.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.